Hello, 1, 2. Hey, everybody. It is 4:39 seconds, that is. I'm going to be prompt. We'll start on time. Thanks for coming down. This is Time Flies When You API from the good people at Jamf. My name is Ross Drummond. I am systems engineer at Jamf, and I'll be joined shortly by Mr. Chris Reynolds, who's also a systems engineer at Jamf. Now, before we get into the API stuff, I'll just give you, for those of you that don't know what Jamf is, we help organizations succeed with Apple. We only work with Apple, which is convenient at Macaduck. And we do that with 3 products. We've got one called Jamf Now, and Jamf Now is kind of our small to medium business offering. And the reason I always like to talk about it here, especially when it's a big thing, you get the first 3 devices with Jamf Now free. So if you have any kids, or you have grannies or granddads that don't know how to use their iPad, and you want to enroll them into Jamf Now so they can you can update Skype for them, that's not a bad idea. You can do it for free. And then we've got Jamf Pro, which is kind of what we're going to talk about at length today, and that's kind of complete Apple device management for any amount of devices. And then our newest product is Jamf Connect, which is an acquisition of a company called Orchard and Grove. And Jamf Connect gives you user provisioning. We've got the booth over in the food area. Is it the food court? Is that the atrium? I don't know. We've got an area in the back, and you can come and see us. And if you want to know more about Jamf Connect, go see Joel, or we'll be there. Happy to demo it. So, more than 26,000 organizations rely on Jamf to manage over 13 million Apple devices. It's quite a few. We look after 9 of the top 10 technology companies. I've still been unable to find what that 10th technology company is, or who they are. 19 of the top 25 Fortune 500 rather. 14,000 schools, 22 of the most valuable brands, and all of the marketing groups. If you like to market, you might be using Jamf Pro. So here's what we're going to look at today. What is an API? When we were writing this, I'll come to that in a second. What you can do with the Jamf Pro Classic API, which is kind of the cool stuff. Then what we do with the Jamf Pro API. We've got 2 applications we're going to talk about, and then API in the Jamf Marketplace. A lot of our partners, some of which are here today, use our API to integrate. So, to begin, what is an API? And when we were writing this, I kind of was like, I've been in those meetings, and I'm sure you probably have as well. Those calls or meetings where somebody just kind of goes, the API can do that, or we can do that with the API. And it's like, well, what is an API? It's kind of this sort of buzzword for magic things to happen. And an API stands for Application Programming Interface. I know we all love an acronym. And it's the code that governs the access point between 2 things, right? So, we use APIs all the time. If you go on Facebook and then share a link on Twitter, you've used those 2 companies' APIs. And if you pop that on LinkedIn and send it to a pal on WhatsApp, that's 4 APIs you've used. So, next time somebody says, the API can do this, I know all about APIs. It's on Twitter, I've tweeted about it. So that API, that application program interface, that's traditionally done over HTTP, right? So we usually get and return information with an API over HTTP via JSON or XML. So again, there's 2 new acronyms for you. JSON, well, that stands for Java, Script, Object, Notification. And it looks a wee bit like that. And it's easy for us humans to read and write, and it's easy for machines to parse and generate. So, quite common. And then we've got XML. Now that stands for Extensible Markup Language. So EML, really, but I'm not going to fight it. And it looks like that. Now, if you've ever played with a plist or a config profile, chances are you've probably seen some XML. So that's how we can use an API. We communicate with an API using those languages. So what does it actually do? What somebody says, oh yeah, the API can do that. What is that doing? So we get an application or a client, a thing, and it'll make a request. That API language makes that request to a server, somewhere where that API language is understood, where that is hosted. So in this case, we've got a Jamf Pro server. And then it talks to a database, a data source. It says, all right, I've asked you for this. Can you get it for me? Yeah, here you go. That API, and then you get an API response. Okay, so that's what, when we're making API calls, as they call them, that's what's happening. Client makes a request goes to the server checks for the answer, here's your answer. And you've used an API in Jamf, right? Like, you might have not used API in the back end, you've opened terminal, started doing funky things like that, but you've used it, if you've searched for the Mac App Store to get apps in the self-service portal. Or if you use Apple's deployment programs, when you're talking between those two, those are APIs. If you're one of 7 people in the UK that managed to get GSX access, you've probably used their API. Or if you use the SCCM plugin, you're using an API to talk between Jamf, send all the information to SCCM rather. So what we're going to talk about today is the Jamf Pro Classic API. And the Jamf Pro Classic API is all on your Jamf Pro servers if you have one. And it's available. You just put /API, and you can see all the things that you can do with it. This is a short video of us scrolling through it. But the Classic API, it supports basic authentication. So we use, when you're wanting to do things in the API, if it's computers, you create a username and password that you can either give full access, like an administrator, or you can give access for a very specific thing within Jamf. So if I wanted an account that just had the ability to delete computers, I could do that. And you can see here we're getting responses in XML, and then down there we've got responses in JSON. So create your accounts, give them the access that you require, or let them do what they want. And we can do these requests. There's 4 types of requests we can make, right? So we can post things, we can get things, we can put things, and we can delete things. So what we mean by that is when you post something, you're creating something. When we get, we're reading. And when we put, we're updating something. And when we delete, you guessed it, we're deleting it. So that's the 4 request methods that we have, right? And let's have a little bit of a closer look at it. Posts, that's used to create new objects or issue new actions. So I've got a little bit of a script example here. So you can see here this is probably what you'd be doing in like a terminal window. Using curl, we've got a username and password there, dictated by $, the wildcards. And then we're using XML to post something. In this instance, we're creating a department name called field engineering, right? So we're using the API, the department's API, to create a new department. So you're like, well, I could probably just go into settings, choose departments, and add that myself, which you could. But maybe you've got 20 to make, and somebody's already sent you all that on a spreadsheet. So you could upload that into an XML format, and in one command, create all of those instantly. And that's where something like the API suddenly becomes really useful for doing really boring admin tasks. So get would be the next one we'll look at. And that retrieves information identified by the request URI. So in this example here, we're getting information on a computer with the ID of 1. And this is what the SCCM plugin does, right? So the SCCM plugin is getting information from the Jamf Pro server saying, give me all this information. I'm going to put it in here. So it's a really easy way to export a lot of results of something. You could get all your inactive policies. So then we're updating existing records. And in here, we're updating a policy. So I said in that previous example there in get, all right, we're going to get all of our disabled policies. Well, now maybe I want to enable them all. Or maybe I've found all these policies that are matching the word Google Chrome. I don't want to disable them all because I'm going to push out Firefox. And again, rather than having to open up all those, command clicking all those policies and then editing, we can do it with a few commands. And then delete, as I said before, it's going to remove that resource identified by that URI. So maybe I've disabled all those policies, and I've realized they've been disabled for absolutely ages. And they're just sat gathering dust in my SQL database. So I can batch delete them all, and they're gone. And that's just a little example of what you can do with those four commands. So what can you do with the API is, well, you can get some logs. It's a picture-based pun. I'm going to get Mr. Reynolds up, and it is what we call demo time. We're doing a live demo. Why not? So shall we? Let's do it. I've got a switch here, so this is where it gets fun and games. No, that's brightness. It's Command dim screen on the touch bar Mac. If you didn't know, I didn't know that until a minute ago. So, all right. I'll give you a T-shirt for anyone who can guess what the password is. Oh no, hold on. It was Jamf 123, not 123, 4. Right. Okay. I'll zoom that. Right. So Chris is going to be our what we call our user. So I'll stand here because I'm. So, classic example. You get a support call. Somebody goes,
I'm having an issue.
Oh
with
no,
my machine.
That's a nightmare.
I know.
Sorry about that. Tell you what, could you get the logs for me?
Do what?
The logs.
Okay.
Just send them over in an email or something, and we can do that. So to grab those logs, if you just click Finder, it's that little smiley man in the bottom left there on your Mac.
Yeah.
And then click Go. It's at the top in the menu bar, right at the top there. And then we're going to go to Folder. And I just need you to go, so it's / var / logs / and then just click Go for me.
Oh, I've spelled / wrong.
Okay. Yeah, you're an idiot. You don't get a Mac anymore. So yeah, so as you can see, annoying, but perhaps there's a better way. So how about you open up our branded self-service that we've done for Macaduck? Look at that. And then you should see something called a log uploader.
Got it?
Cool, just click on upload for me. Now some magic is happening. We need the... Hey. Live demo. There we go. Your logs have been successfully uploaded to IT. We'll contact you shortly to assist further.
Thank you very much.
No worries. End scene. All right, cool. So we have, going back, right, here we go. Oh, killing it right now. Switching, done. So how did we do that? So we got a user to run a self-service policy. Log files were copied, compressed, and dated. We uploaded to the device inventory record, so it's easily accessible by the help desk. So that's all very well and great. What was happening under the hood? So this is where the API has come in, right? So we've had our required variables declared. So we declare the required variables using an authorization token for the Jamf Pro account, Jamf Pro URL, the device serial number, and log files to upload. We then copy the specified log files and compress them into an archive, named with the current date and time. We also check the file size to ensure we aren't uploading anything over a certain size. I've realized I've not shown the files. We'll do that in a second. We'll make a GET request against the computer's endpoint for the computer ID. and then we'll make a post request for file uploads. And then we'll check for the HTTP status code response and advise the user of success or failure with that little Jamf helper dialog box. So this is probably the one you want to take advantage of. That script that we've got, if you want to do that for your users so they can upload their logs, you can head there, jamf.it/log uploader. I want to show you real quick, actually, just very quickly, what that looks like in the Jamf Pro server. So let's do this, because it's cool. Do what we call a login. So when that log uploading happened, we were adding it to the inventory record of that particular computer, right? So if I go to this MacBook Air, and then attachments, there's the logs, right? So obviously, once you've got those logs, and you can create a user, for your service desk, maybe you could have them have an account that just has access to read computer records. They can download that and do what they need to do. And then, bear in mind, you probably want to delete them afterwards because nobody likes a massive SQL database. So I'm going to switch back now. I'm getting pretty good at this, Chris. Getting cocky. All right, play. So some final bits on that API, so that getting started. Use curl for command line access. We're using the curl binary. And head to developer.jamf.com. There's actually some example API commands you can check out if you want to play around with it, do some things. And be sure to include those request headers, so such as XML or JSON in your requests. Otherwise, you're going to get probably rejected by the API, and no one likes rejection. When creating objects via the API, use an ID of 0. So that signifies a new object to be created. And like I said, there's HTTP response codes, which we've got here, informational success. These are just ones to bear in mind. And these are all on developer.jamf.com. And we can share this slide deck as well if anybody wants it. Come see us. They're just things to bear in mind. So with that, now it's properly your turn.
Thank you.
Oh, no worries. What does Jamf do with the classic API? Mr. Chris Reynolds.
So back in October, we released a couple of iOS applications. They're called Jamf Setup and Jamf Reset. Their names are very clear into their purpose. And initially, we'll just talk about Jamf Setup. Now, they both use the API in different ways. It's a over-the-air workflow for both of these, so we'll just start talking about Jamf Setup. So basically, it's for shared iPad. So if you have iPads that have a particular use case, and then they end up being very static. They're set up for that use case. IT have maybe had to touch the iPad, or they've been put into a specific configuration, and then they're stuck in that until either IT has to touch the device again and move it into a different group, or somebody has to change something on the back end. So the idea behind Jamf Setup is that it's a user sort of driven workflow that allows the end user to choose the configuration that they want that iPad to be, or any iOS device to be set up in, and then it basically can do that automatically. So this is what it looks like. It's a very simple interface. Everything that you see on the left-hand side is configurable with app config. So that's basically some XML that we deliver with the application. And we can change things like the logo, all the text that you see there, the user choices, color schemes. So you can really brand that very, very easily. In this scenario, it's kind of a healthcare setup. And this was designed to allow shift workers to be able to pick up an iPad, choose their role, use the iPad, they then get the correct apps, correct config profiles, maybe sets up, says they're allowed mail or they're not. And when the user chooses an option and hits submit, we get a success message if it was able to actually write that. And that's using the put command. So it's taking that choice that the user selected and actually putting that against the device record. It's updating, and in this case, an extension attribute. So we've created an extension attribute called role. You can have whatever you like. And it really sort of fits into any workflow. So it could be education. It might be a student picking up the device and choosing what course they might be running. So it could be maths or history. And then they pick that role, that choice, and then they automatically get all the apps that they need. And because it's gone into that extension attribute has been set as registered nurse in this example, it's gone into the smart group registered nurse iPads. So it automatically knows it's a registered nurse iPad and configures it accordingly. And we can deliver anything you can deliver through Jamf at that point, so applications, books, config profiles, restrictions. The other application is called Jamf Reset. So in some scenarios, you might actually want to sanitize the device after it's been set up for a particular use case. Somebody might have logged into their email, logged into Facebook or OneDrive, and relying on users to log out of all those services, you just can't do it. So we've got Jamf Reset as a very simple way of resetting the device. Especially if you're talking to somebody over the phone and you're asking them to reset it. You can say, I want to go into settings and general and reset, and then erase all content to settings. And are you sure? Are you really sure? They're not sure. They're just completely lost at that point a lot of the time. So again, an application that we can brand, application config to choose the logos, the text, the color scheme, single button, user hits reset, and the device is then automatically reset. And it does that by using the post command. So we're actually sending a remote command to the device to wipe it. So if you've used Jamf Pro and iOS, that's something that an administrator might do from the console, but this is something that the end user can do. So we just look at sort of how that looks in action. So imagine the device has just been enrolled through automated MDM enrollment. We've automatically deployed these applications, and then the user chooses their role, hits submit. We get a confirm message to say that that extension attribute has been written successfully. And then we can quit out of the application, and the configuration would have changed at that point. So we've changed the wallpaper, we've changed the applications that are available. You don't have to reset between use cases. You can just go back into Jamf Setup and choose a different role. And if they do that, then it sort of makes that process nice and quick. So depending on the use case, you may or may not want to actually run through the reset procedure. So we have a marketplace where a lot of people might submit their own integrations that they've used with the API. It's a real useful resource if you want to see what other people are doing. If it's something that you're already using the API and you're thinking it might be useful to share that with somebody else, you can go to our marketplace and submit any ideas that you've got, and we may then post them on the website. So one tool you may have heard of and used in the past is the Jamf Migrator. So it's an open source utility. It was written by our professional services team and used basically to migrate data from one Jamf Pro instance to another one at a very granular level. This is what it looks like. I saw somebody using this out in the foyer earlier. So pretty simple interface. We can put our source Jamf Pro server and our destination one in, a username that has the rights to be able to read from our source server and write to our destination server. And you can get very, very granular if you just want to migrate particular things, even down to individual config profiles, then you can do that. A lot of people use this for migrating from their dev instance to production instance. So if you're running a development instance of Jamf Pro, then this is a really, really useful and easy way to be able to move policies, configuration profiles from one to the other without actually having to sit down and recreate them manually. And you can see that we're using the get and post. So we're making a get request against the endpoints for each of the objects that we can potentially migrate. We can pull them and actually just save them to file. So that can be useful from a backup perspective. If you just want to have those saved somewhere, especially if you're using Jamf Cloud, you won't have access to the database backup. So this is a good way of backing up your policies in case somebody goes in and messes about with them. And then we've got the post, which we actually do to create clones of the objects that we've either pulled down from file or that we're going from one to the other. So we'll just have a quick look at that in action. Yeah.
Live demo. All right. Look at this, smashing it now. Here we go. Okay. So this is overview. This is our Macaduck Jamf Pro demo. So we have an empty Jamf Pro server, and I've got we can do restricted software. I've got no restricted software, nothing there. Go in here, restricted software. I've got some stuff there. Cool. So this is Jamf Migrator. So yeah, like Chris was saying, you can do some cool stuff with this. So we can export stuff to just files. So we have all those XML files, at which point we can import as well. So if you can kind of create a master template for your Jamf Pro setups, and then just rinse and repeat, which is cool. And yeah, like I say, for backing up as well is really useful. So in these two instances, we've got two admin accounts, but like we were saying before with the API, because we can give roles to specific users, you could theoretically give somebody the ability to just read the restricted software in Jamf Pro, and then only have the ability to write in the new one. So I'm going to hit go, and we're going to see what happens. Is working. So one thing I do know is going to happen is that because I've only scoped, I'm not copying over any of the smart groups. I don't think terminal is going to come across because it's going to say I don't know what to scope to because I don't have that smart group. So if I go to my Jamf Pro server and do a Ricky refresh, you should. Oh no, there you go. Come out. Well, that's rude, isn't it? Yeah. This is why the sweating of the live demo now, you see, this is 60 seconds? I'm getting 60 seconds, I've been told. Maybe we can do it again. Come on. Happy now, is it? We'll do that Steve Jobs thing. We got everyone to turn their Wi-Fi off. There you go. Look, it's worked. BitTorrent and macOS installer. So yeah, so we have copied over our restricted software. So super easy, super quick way to take stuff from a dev environment, which if you're a Jamf Cloud customer, you get one for free, and bring it over into the real world, or vice versa. So that was all we wanted to show, wasn't it?
Yes.
All right. That was very. And play. One. Okay.
Cool. So this is the marketplace, and so have a browse through here. There's stuff that you will almost certainly have come across before, things like the MUT. For mass updating items within Jamf Pro, which is really, where the majority of people and why the majority of people use the API is to save time. So using the MUT, you could update, every device that you had in there with a particular value. Obviously, we use Jamf Migrator there. That's probably one of the most common common ones. And then do things like Splunk or something Jasper reports where we're actually putting out dashboards. So those services are reading in out of the API to display Jamf information elsewhere. So again, that's the URL. So just have a search through there, see if there's anything you think might find useful. Kind of coming up to the end, and just want to finish with a plug for the Jamf Nation Roadshow, which is held here in London. It's going to be at Tobacco Dock on Friday, 17th of May. The registration page is now live, so go to the jamf.it shortcut there. We've got a number of tracks this year as well, so you can actually register for a particular track, and it'll be more focused and more breakout rooms. So it's a free event, so feel free to come along to that, and hopefully see you there. Thank you.
I guess questions? There's a hand. I've got Matt Taylor here as well. So.
Hi. Hello. Thanks a lot for that. Does the fact that it's called the Jamf Classic API imply that there's some sort of funky new Jamf API on the horizon?
If you go to developer.jamf.com, you'll see there's a new API in the process, some beta. But cool. Yes, is the answer to that question.
In that case, you may be able to answer my follow-up question, which is whether there are any plans or whether perhaps the new API allows you to access data about policy success and failures and other sorts of things that at the moment I don't think we can get from the API.
Did you say that again, Matt?
That should be already available by the computer history endpoint, I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think.
Okay.
If
cool.
you come find us, sorry, I can't see where you are.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll have a poke around. There was something that I wanted at some point that I was convinced I couldn't get, but I may have just been wrong.
But
yeah, cool.
Come find us at the booth afterwards and we can talk about it more.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Cubed out. Brilliant. Cool. That's it. You're done. Well, thanks very much, guys. We'll see you in the pub.